Yeah, this is really thrilling for us. Our final guest of the evening is an accomplished author, screenwriter, playwright, a highly acclaimed artist, and one of our finest character actors. Burt Young has well over 100 credits on film and television, including unforgettable portrayals and terrific pictures like Chinatown. Let's stop right there.
Yeah, I mean...
Chinatown. This is a dream. The Killer Elite, Back to School, Last Exit to Brooklyn, and She's So Lovely. But perhaps his most... Yeah, great. But perhaps his most memorable and beloved role was as Paulie in the phenomenally successful Rocky films. Mr. Young infuses each role with a rare and touching combination of strength and vulnerability. Quite simply, he's one of the best, and we're very pleased to have him with us tonight to discuss his extraordinary accomplishments and his role opposite John Voight in Mr. Ashby's never-before-released cut of Lookin' to Get Out. It is a tremendous honor to welcome to our show Mr. Burt Young. Mr. Young, are you with us?
Yes, I am. And
hey, welcome.
Thank you for speaking so well.
I do the best I can. We're very honored to have you with us. You're one of our favorites, and this is a big thrill for us. Before we get into your collaboration with Mr. Ashby in this film, I just want you to tell me a little bit about how you got started and what motivated you to get started as an actor in this business. Did it seem like a faraway dream for you when you were young?
Yeah. It was too corny a reality from where I had grown up. It was only when I was in my late 20s and I was chasing a girl that I got.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah. So this is a common thread on the show that we hear. It's like that. So that's awesome.
You understand that?
Yes.
Oh yeah. But you studied with Strasberg, didn't you?
Yeah, I was. That probably was one of the luckiest things for me, that she wanted to study with him, this lady Norma, and I thought it was a girl. I didn't know who Lee Strasberg was. But I figured I can get in most places, so I found out who he was, and he received me, and I've never stopped. He gave me care and hope and justice.
Yeah. How did you take to it? What did it satisfy in you acting? What did it do for you?
Well, up until then, I had a family. I was married when I was 19. I was in the Marines very early, much earlier than that, and I was always sort of I was in every business that didn't need an inventory, and I always was on the front line. So without probably knowing that, I was pushing buttons to be where I perhaps would normally be nervous or not ready for the action. I was pushing buttons how to be and stand tall as I could in the different situations. And so when I started with Lee, he had an ABC rooted in Stanislavski's teachings, and it came to me very quickly.
Yeah,
I understood.
Yeah, and I think if I read this correctly, one of his comments about you, he was taken by the seemingly endless kind of well of emotions, and that's why I asked what acting did for you. I was wondering if you felt that you had all these emotions and passions, and acting was something that allowed you to direct those passions.
Well, I always had passion and hunger and hurt, like all of us. Mm-hmm. But by being fairly tough, I covered over much of it to such a degree that I almost lost the ability to communicate from brain to mouth. And he saw a very tense guy that amazed him, and he wished to use that to open up sort of the well, and all I could do was nod yes, and I never stopped nodding yes.
So that's great for us too. Now you started in films around the time that Mr. Ashby directed his first, around 1970. He directed The Landlord, and that's around the time you broke in movies, I believe. When did your consciousness and knowledge of Ashby begin, and what were your thoughts on his work?
I went to a screening of with John Voight of Being There.
Oh.
And I had seen I don't know which came first. Was it Harold and Claude?
Harold and Maude came first.
Yeah, they came first. Yeah.
I saw that without knowing how, and I was amazed at the love affair of this charming woman and this kid. It was amazing to pull it off in such a way, but I didn't know how, and I really wasn't a movie guy until I sat down in the same room with Hal, and if you would believe it, they were showing me his worth as a director. I already had the part in Looking to Get Out, and so Being There was just an extra bonus for me, where I just could hardly talk to him after watching that.
Yeah, and so how did you already got the part in Looking to Get Out at that time? Tell me about the script and your reaction to it when you first read it.
Well, it wasn't mainly it was John Voight. I knew him, of course, as an important actor and a decent type of guy, but I didn't know him personally. But I was working on MGM, a lot of MGM, on a movie of my own that I had written. And he walked across, and he walked straight at me, and he said, "Bert, hi, I'm John Voight." I said, "Yeah, how are you?" He says, "I need an actor. I co-wrote this movie. I need an actor that can blow me off the stage to make it work." He said, "Would you work with me?" I said, "Yeah," and that's how I was hired.
Wow. Well, that's quite a pitch, right?
That is.
I need you to blow me off the screen.
Yeah. As soon as I got out of Inside, I told everybody I could find, "Would you believe this shit?"
That's great. But you've worked with some of the best directors. Looking at your resume, and I'm wondering, what for you made Hal unique?
He was truly unique. He was a flower boy. He was from the days of the flower people.
Yeah.
He was gentle and soft. Do you know that he used to roommate with Sammy Davis?
No kidding.
No one knows. No. It was when Sammy couldn't get rooms in Vegas in that time frame. But he was the gentlest, sweetest man. When he saw, one day I remember I was drinking. I came in hungover. My eyes probably looked purple. He looked, he said, "Bert, do you want to go home? Do you want to go home? Are you okay?" I said, "Nah, I'm okay." But he really was concerned about my welfare, not about the picture, not about the time lost. He just was concerned for me. And that's how he was throughout the movie.
You know, I think something that echoes what you just said. I heard a conversation with Mr. Voight where he talked about they were filming Coming Home, and they kept flubbing part of a scene, and Voight was getting very frustrated. And Ashby just looked at him and said, "Don't get frustrated. This is enjoyable. We're making a movie. We're having fun." You know? What a wonderful attitude to have.
That is.
He did have that, and he was soft as butter, and he had eyes that saw beyond. He was a true writer, director, filmmaker, and he cared for everybody on the set. I never saw a crossword addressed to anybody. It could be the caterer, could be anybody. I never saw him cross.
It sounds like when you talk about how directors get the performances that they want from their actors. Some are very good at directing by not directing, and it sounds like Mr. Ashby was somebody that you just wanted to give your best to. Was that his directing style?
I think you said it pretty well. He was behind the camera, and he was like a warm cheerleader that he was rooting for you and all the participants. He was rooting for you.
Yeah.
And I think he guided and shaped us, perhaps many times with us not knowing.
Yeah.
He was a very intelligent man.
So years later,
but it didn't take that much to guide me. but he was a very intelligent man.
And years later, do you? A few years ago, do you receive a call from Mr. Voigt about this unseen cut of Looking to Get Out?
Yeah. I hear from that pain in the ass every 3 or 4 years. You know, we truly care for each other.
Yeah.
But if I saw him more than every second year, I'd be in shock. I run into him in Rome. He was playing the Pope. I had to run into him. There he is, dressed like the Pope, this Protestant guy. I think he's Jewish now. He's playing the Pope, all makeup on and everything. So I got a blessing from him, and it was good to see him. And then a year later, he called and told me about this cut that he found very thoughtfully done and showing more of all of our abilities.
Yeah.
And
so
so
you traveled and you watched that cut with him for the first time, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell me about that and your reaction to what you saw.
Well, it was a thing of beauty. You see what happened with that thing. Probably John knows much more because John co-produced the project. Mm-hmm. But Hal was a master editor before directing, I believe. And when the movie went over budget, the studio was upset, cross, and perhaps close to being broke. And they released Hal for the editing. Mm. And so his greatest strength was removed from him and from us and from the public. And he evidently did this editing on his own to leave what he felt the movie should be and should finally look like, and was discovered by this youthful author that was writing about Hal, and brought them to John's attention.
Did it feel to you like a different movie than the original cut, and did it feel unmistakably like an Ashby movie? Finally,
not different. More. The characters were more round. You had people out there rather than flat surfaces.
Yeah.
Was I clear? Or
was fine. That was
stumbling?
No. That was A+, my friend.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, of course.
Please. About how he had been sick for a little while.
Yeah.
At the end, he wasn't working, and he never was a pushing type of man. I think he worked with a rock group to do something that was quite brilliant, but he wasn't doing any movies at the end of his life, and he was sick, and nothing was working, and he was brought home to his place in Malibu, and his friends were trying everything, crystals and candles and everything, and this might sound like self-aggrandizement for me, but it wasn't. I don't mean it that way. But I went out to see him, and he was looking shaggy, his beard was shaggy. He had on disheveled, like the farmer's overalls with the straps around his shoulder. And he was laying in bed, and I laid down next to him. I asked him, is he scared, He says, yeah, Bert. And I just laid there with him for about 20 minutes. Not much I could say. And I went home, and honestly, I had a dream in the morning. And Hal was sparkling clean and shaved and in bright new overalls. And he was beaming like the sunshine. And they called me about 10 in the morning, told me he died.
Oh.
And that's a fact.
Wow. His, what do you think his legacy is? For moviegoers that are just coming into his films, what do you hope they take from Ashby and his work?
Well, I'd say complex literature done clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
That sounds very good.
That sounds good to me.
I think that sounds good to me, too.
Hang on. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to use that.
Okay.
Before I let you go, I would be remiss not to ask you about the two things, actually. One is about, obviously, the Rocky series that you've been a part of that's been such a great part of everyone's life. My question...
Hot stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Isn't it, I have to say. I never know when that kid's going to quit. The hot stuff, really.
I'm wondering with the latest film, just watching the film, it felt kind of like a full circle experience. Did it feel that way when you're doing it? It's somewhat profound in a way for you?
Well, first it was 17 years after the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky V, which to me was a clinker.
Yeah, you won't hear any disagreement there. Okay.
Yeah, I was sore. In fact, he and I didn't talk because I was sore with what we didn't do to help that movie. Mm-hmm. I was sore at the both of us, all of us. So we really didn't talk for years and years and years until they told me he had written another story. One was turned down, and the other was turned down again, but he believed in it. Yeah. And my daughter reminded me, my daughter, now close to 40, she grew up with the Rocky things. And she was reminding me how we used to work together, write together, rehearse together, and the joy we used to have out of each other working. And so I went I was invited as a part of the audience to when he was doing that Contender series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With Sugar Ray Leonard and that was the first time we said hello in many years. And he said, Bert, I've been turned down on this, but I only want to hear what you have to say about it. So he sent me a copy, and it was magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
I says, Sylvester, we must do it. We just must do it. It's got all the purity. It got the youth and the strength of the first. I said, we're going to do it. We have to do it. And we started work, and he made it happen. He carried the whole ball, really. He directed. I think he even drove the trucks. I'm not sure. He was completely unstoppable. It was one of the privileges I had working with a guy that just did not sleep at all in any task.
He is a force of nature.
Yeah,
he really is. Jerry, you wanted to ask about one of Mr. Young's films.
There are a lot. I mean, there's so many great films to choose from, Mr. Young. But I will ask you this because a couple of years ago, Rodney Dangerfield passed away, and I want to know what was the experience like working with him on Back to School.
Well, I didn't know Rodney, but he made me laugh like crazy.
Oh yeah.
before ever meeting him, And I took the part. It was a pretty small part, and it wasn't thinking that way. But I took it really to know him, because I thought he was really a pissy, you know. And but at the beginning, we got off to the wrong start. He was sort of abrupt at one of the college boys outside the Wisconsin College over there. And so for a while, I borrowed him from my trailer for poor conduct in deportment, I told him. See, my trailer was always a meeting place where the Teamsters, everybody, when I wasn't doing heavy sensual work, there would be salami and provolone and cheese and wine. And so if you borrowed from my trailer, you really were hurting. But then he became, and I recognized that he had, as funny as he was, he had a lot of fright and fear in himself, and I was perhaps hasty, and we became friends.
Yeah.